On March 4th, something happened that you may never fully see with your natural eyes, but your spirit felt it. There was a shift in the air, a silence that did not feel ordinary, a stillness that carried weight. While you were asleep, while your house was quiet, while the world moved unaware, a confrontation took place over your address. This is not poetic language. This is a spiritual reality. On March 4th, the angel of death passed over your house last night because Michael stood guard. You were not supposed to wake up the same. Something had been assigned. Something had been permitted to move, but it did not complete its mission. It could not cross the line. There are nights when heaven watches, and then there are nights when heaven fights. March 4th was a night of battle. You may have gone to bed feeling tired, maybe even burdened. Perhaps you sensed tension you could not explain. Maybe you felt heaviness pressing against your peace. But what you did not see was that your name had been mentioned in the unseen realm. An accusation had been raised. A timeline had been suggested. An ending had been considered. Yet above every whisper of destruction, a higher command was spoken. Stand guard. And when that command was released, Michael moved. The angel of death approached, but it did not have the final authority. It carried an assignment, but it did not carry permission. There is a difference. And when it came near your dwelling, it encountered resistance. Not from locks, not from alarms, not from human strength. It encountered a warrior stationed by divine order. Michael stood at the threshold of your life, and what was sent against you recognized rank. There are moments in history when destruction passes through regions unchecked, but there are also moments marked by divine exemption. March 4th was marked with your exemption. You must understand the urgency of this revelation. You are not here by routine. You are not breathing by coincidence. The reason the assignment failed is because your purpose has not been finished. There is something still written about you that has not yet manifested. There are words you have not yet spoken, lives you have not yet influenced, prayers you have not yet prayed, impact you have not yet released into the earth. Heaven does not defend what is complete. Heaven guards what still carries assignment. The angel of death passed over your house because your story is not over. This is why you must open this now. Because survival without understanding creates complacency. And complacency is dangerous after protection. When heaven intervenes, it is not just rescue, it is revelation. It is a wake-up call wrapped in mercy. It is a reminder that you are living inside a larger narrative than you realized. Something tried to close a chapter that God has not finished writing. And here is the rare revelation. Not every battle is meant to be felt. Some battles are fought entirely in the unseen so that your peace can remain intact. If you slept through the storm, it was not because there was no storm. It was because you were covered. There was a line drawn around your life. March 4th will not be remembered by the world as significant. The news will not report it. History books will not record it. But heaven marked it. It was the night an assignment was denied access. The night a threshold was defended. The night your breath was preserved for destiny. Ask yourself this. Why would such resistance be necessary unless what you carry threatens darkness? Why would a guard of that magnitude be stationed unless your future holds weight? You are not protected because you are weak. You are protected because you are valuable. There is a difference. The enemy does not waste effort on empty vessels. Something about your future required interruption of destruction. Something about your calling demanded defense. And whether you feel ready or not, whether you feel qualified or not, the truth remains. You have a purpose that hasn't been finished. This is not about fear. It is about awareness. The angel of death passing over your house is not a story of terror. It is a story of divine boundary. It is a reminder that there are limits to what can touch you when heaven says no. And last night, heaven said no. No to premature endings. No to interrupted destiny. No to stolen breath. No to unfinished assignment. Michael stood guard. Let that settle into your spirit. There are people who cannot explain why they are still here after certain close calls. There are moments when outcomes should have gone differently. But for you, this was not random chance. This was targeted protection. A deliberate act. A divine intervention. And here is the urgency. When heaven guards you, it expects movement from you. Protection is not permission to remain stagnant. It is an announcement that time still belongs to you, for now. You are being given space to complete what was written before you were born. March 4th was a dividing line. Before it, there was vulnerability you did not see. After it, there is awareness you cannot ignore. The angel of death passed over your house last night because Michael stood guard. And if that does not awaken something inside you, nothing will. You are still here. Your heart is still beating. Your lungs are still filling. Your mind is still thinking. That means the assignment is still active. Open this now, not just this message, but your understanding. Open your awareness to the fact that your life is being monitored by heaven for completion, not cancellation. Something greater is unfolding. And this was only the beginning of what you are about to discover. What was sent toward you had intention. It had direction. It had a target. But it did not have the final word. On March 4th, there was an assignment that moved with precision. It was not random pressure. It was not ordinary fatigue. It was not just another restless night. There was strategy behind it. In the unseen realm, assignments are often released when a person is closest to breakthrough. When purpose begins to mature, resistance begins to intensify. And what you experienced leading up to that night may suddenly make sense. Think back carefully. Were there unusual frustrations? Sudden waves of discouragement? Strange thoughts that did not feel like your own? A heaviness that seemed to settle without explanation? These are not always coincidences. Sometimes they are indicators that something is attempting to position itself against your forward movement. But here is what the enemy underestimated. There are spiritual laws that govern your life when you are marked by purpose. One of those laws is this: what God has not finished cannot be terminated. The assignment that approached your house on March 4th carried intent, but it did not carry authority. And authority is everything. Intent can be strong. Pressure can be real. Threats can feel overwhelming. But without permission from heaven, no assignment can complete itself over a protected life. This is why the confrontation happened before it reached your door. Divine interruption is one of the greatest mysteries of protection. Most people think protection means absence of attack. But that is not always true. Protection often means interception before impact. It means something was moving toward you, and then it was stopped mid-course. You may never know how close it came. You may never see the full picture of what almost unfolded. But heaven does not need you to see it to stop it. On March 4th, interruption overruled intention. And here is the deeper revelation. When an assignment fails, it leaves evidence. Not visible evidence, but spiritual evidence. A sudden calm. An unexplained relief. A shift in atmosphere the next morning. You may have woken up feeling different and not known why. You may have sensed that something heavy had lifted. That is not imagination. That is aftermath. A mission did not complete. But do not misunderstand this moment. A failed assignment does not mean the battle was small. It means the defense was strong. There are levels of protection that activate only when purpose reaches certain stages. You are not guarded at this level unless what you carry is advancing. That is why the pressure intensified before March 4th. Darkness tries to close doors before destiny opens them wider. It attempts to create exhaustion before expansion. It whispers doubt before promotion. But it cannot override what hath been written. And this is where you must pay attention. Being spared is not casual. It is not ordinary. It is a signal. It is heaven saying, there is more. There are conversations you are meant to have. There are decisions you are meant to make. There are territories you are meant to step into. The assignment failed because your next chapter carries weight. And now let me speak directly to you. If you feel in your spirit that this message is confirming something you sense but could not explain, then this is not the time to stay silent. This is the moment to respond. Like this video as a sign that you recognize divine protection. Comment that you believe your purpose is still active. Subscribe to this channel if you know you are walking under spiritual covering and you want to remain alert in this season. When you engage, you are not just supporting content. You are helping this warning reach someone else whose house was also guarded but who has not yet understood why. Because there are others who survived March 4th and do not know they were defended. The assignment that failed against you may attempt to redirect its focus elsewhere. That is why awareness matters. When you share this message, you extend insight to someone who might still be confused about the pressure they felt. You become part of the interruption for someone else. And here is another truth. When an assignment fails, it exposes weakness in the opposing strategy. Darkness does not like exposure. It prefers secrecy. It prefers you to dismiss spiritual realities as coincidence. But once you become aware that your life was targeted and defended, you begin to walk differently. You begin to pray differently. You begin to choose differently. Protect can change his posture. March 4th was not just about survival. It was about revelation. The failed assignment was evidence that your life is not loosely monitored. It is specifically guarded. There is precision around you. There is oversight around you. There is intentionality surrounding your breath. And this is why you cannot return to spiritual sleep. Something tried and failed. That means something will attempt again, but from a different angle. The difference now is that you are aware. You know that what surrounds you is stronger than what approaches you. You know that interruption is possible. You know that authority outranks intention. The assignment that failed was not the end of conflict. It was the beginning of clarity. And clarity is dangerous to darkness. On March 4th, a mission moved. It was blotted. They retreated. And you woke up still breathing. That is not small. That is not casual. That is not random. It is confirmation. You have a purpose that hasn't been finished. And because of that, what was sent against you could not stay. There is a reason the confrontation on March 4th did not escalate. There is a reason the assignment that approached your house did not cross the threshold. The reason has a name, and that name carries weight in the unseen realm. Michael. Michael is not a symbol. He is not poetic imagery. He is a defender, a warrior, a commander assigned to stand where destiny must not be interrupted. When heaven releases Michael to stand guard, it is not a minor adjustment in the spirit. It is a declaration that what is being protected carries governmental significance in the kingdom of God. And on March 4th, the declaration was made over you. While you slept, there was movement in the unseen. Not chaotic movement, but strategic positioning. The angel of death approached with assignment, but it encountered rank. Michael did not negotiate with destruction. He enforces boundaries. He stands between what is sent and what is sealed. And your life, on that night, was sealed. You must understand what it means for Michael to stand guard. It means a verdict had already been decided in your favor. It means heaven reviewed the accusation and found it premature. It means the timeline that darkness attempted to accelerate was denied access. When Michael takes his place, he does so under direct authority. He does not act independently. He moves because God has spoken. That means God spoke about you. Somewhere in the unseen realm, your name was mentioned in defense, not accusation. Your future was discussed in protection, not cancellation. And when the order was given, Michael positioned himself like a wall that could not be breached. The angel of death recognized the boundary and passed over your house. This is not exaggeration. This is spiritual hierarchy. There are levels of opposition, and there are levels of defense. The level of defense that stood over your life reveals the level of purpose still active within you. Michael does not stand guard over what is ordinary. He stands guard over what must reach fulfillment. And here's the part that should awaken you. You did not request this battle. You did not schedule this defense. Yet it happened. That means your purpose is larger than your awareness. There are assignments attached to your obedience that affect more than just your personal life. Your calling touches others. Your survival impacts timelines beyond your own. On March 4th, when that confrontation occurred, something shifted at the exact hour of resistance. The line was drawn. A sound echoed in the unseen, not of chaos, but of command. The sword of authority was present, and what approached your dwelling recognized that it did not have clearance. This is why you woke up still breathing. And yet, here is the sobering truth. When Michael stands guard, it is both protection and announcement. It is heaven declaring that your life is not finished, but it is also heaven signaling that you are entering a season that requires alignment. Protection increases when purpose intensifies. You may begin to notice heightened sensitivity in the coming days. Increased awareness, a stirring that refuses to let you remain passive. That is not anxiety. That is activation. Because when you are defended at this level, you are expected to move at a higher level. Let this sink in deeply. Michael did not stand guard so you could return to distraction. He stood guard because what is ahead of you cannot be completed by someone else. The purpose attached to your name is specific. The assignment connected to your obedience is irreplaceable. And if this revelation is resonating within you, if something inside your spirit feels awakened, then participate in this moment. Type "I'm guarded for a purpose" in the comments as a declaration of agreement. Blessing code 316 is now activated over your house. Let that number mark this season as one of divine defense and rising clarity. But do not disengage here. What comes next will uncover why this protection was timed exactly when it was. You will be glad you remained present for what is about to unfold. Before we continue deeper, I need to speak to those who feel the weight of this message and know it is not casual. What we are doing here is more than sharing words. It is releasing awareness that shields lives. When you support this channel through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal donation through the link in the description or the PayPal QR code flashing on your screen, you are not giving to a platform. You are sowing into guarded destinies. Scripture declares that when you give, it is given back to you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. That is not distant text. That is God speaking directly into your obedience right now. I hear in my spirit the first-person response rising within you. I want to help this message reach the one who almost gave up. That desire is not random. It is invitation. When you sow into this mission, you are releasing oil into lamps that must stay lit in dark places. You are becoming part of the wall that stands between destruction and destiny for someone else. Do not hesitate in this moment. Act as one who understands spiritual timing. As you give, I declare that protection will surround your household, that provision will flow like a river, and that heaven will multiply what you release. Step into this obedience now. Michael stood guard because your story is not complete, and what you do next will determine how powerfully the next chapter unfolds. You are still here because something is still breathing inside you. Not just physical breath, not just the rhythm of your heart, but purpose, assignment, calling. There is a divine intention woven into your existence that has not yet reached its appointed fulfillment. That is why March 4th could not be your ending. That is why the angel of death had to pass over your house. That is why Michael stood guard. Heaven does not defend emptiness. It protects investment. And heaven has invested in you. There were dreams you once carried that felt vivid and alive. Visions that stirred you deeply. Ideas that seemed too big for your current reality. Somewhere along the journey, some of those dreams may have felt delayed. Maybe circumstances slowed them down. Maybe disappointment caused you to question them. Maybe opposition convinced you they were unrealistic. But delayed does not mean denied, and threatened does not mean terminated. What happened on March 4th was not just protection from danger. It was preservation of destiny. There are assignments attached to your life that have not yet surfaced publicly. Seeds planted in your spirit years ago that have not yet broken through the soil. Words spoken over you that are still waiting for manifestation. And when darkness sensed that these seeds were nearing growth, it attempted interruption. But interruption failed. You must understand something powerful. The intensity of resistance often reveals the magnitude of purpose. Small callings rarely encounter fierce opposition, but transformative purpose attracts attention. Not because you are famous, not because you are wealthy, but because you are impactful. Your obedience threatens systems of darkness. Your voice carries influence you have not yet fully realized. Your faithfulness in small places is building authority for larger arenas. And that is why your timeline could not close on March 4th. There are people connected to your future who have not yet met you. There are conversations waiting to take place that will shift someone's direction. There are prayers you will pray that will alter outcomes for families, for communities, perhaps even for generations. If your life had ended prematurely, those chains of impact would have been broken. But heaven does not allow destiny to collapse before its time. The purpose still breathing inside you is evidence that God is not finished writing your story. Perhaps you have felt restless lately, a dissatisfaction with remaining where you are, a sense that something greater is approaching, yet you cannot define it clearly. That restlessness is not confusion. It is awakening. It is purpose stretching its limbs. It is calling demanding space. It is destiny knocking from within. And here is the tension you must face. Protection without participation accomplishes nothing. You were spared, yes, but you were spared for movement. The unfinished purpose inside you requires courage. It requires discipline. It requires surrender. There are habits that may need to shift, environments that may need reevaluation, voices that may need to be silenced so that clarity can increase. Protection creates opportunity, but opportunity demands response. You cannot return to autopilot living after March 4th. You cannot treat your days as casual when heaven has demonstrated intentional defense over your life. When Michael stood guard, it was not to preserve comfort, it was to preserve calling. There are gifts within you that you have minimized, talents you dismissed as ordinary, sensitivities you tried to ignore because they felt inconvenient. But those very qualities may be connected to your assignment. What if the thing you tried to suppress is the key to the impact you are meant to release? The purpose still breathing inside you is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it nudges gently. Sometimes it stirs uneasily until you pay attention. And sometimes it requires a moment like March 4th to shock you into awareness. You survived for a reason. You woke up because heaven expects progress. And this is not about pressure. It is about alignment. When you align with purpose, protection continues to flow. When you step into obedience, grace increases. When you move toward what you were created to do, provision meets you along the way. There is also this truth: unfinished purpose creates spiritual tension. The tension is not meant to overwhelm you, it is meant to propel you. It is a holy discomfort that refuses to let you settle for less than what was written about you before you were born. The enemy attempted to silence what heaven intends to amplify. But amplification is still coming. Your story is not defined by what almost happened. It is defined by what will happen because it did not. Think about that carefully. If March 4th had unfolded differently, certain doors would have remained closed forever. Certain lives would have missed your influence. Certain prayers would have gone unspoken. But because you are still here, those possibilities remain alive. That means hope remains alive. Impact remains alive. Destiny remains alive. The purpose still breathing inside you is not fragile. It is guarded. It is sustained. It is reinforced by divine oversight. But it must be activated by your willingness. So ask yourself honestly, what have you been postponing? What have you been afraid to pursue? What obedience have you delayed because it felt too risky? You were already protected from something far greater than risk. March 4th was not the end of a story, it was the preservation of one. And the next chapter will not write itself. It will require your yes. It will require your faith. It will require you to step forward with the awareness that your life is not random, not overlooked, not insignificant. Something still breathes inside you, and it is time for it to rise. What happened on March 4th was not without precedent. It was not a random spiritual event disconnected from history. There is a pattern in the ways of God, a rhythm in divine protection that echoes through generations. And what you experienced, the angel of death passing over your house because Michael stood guard, follows a pattern that has existed long before you were born. There is something known in the spiritual realm as passing over. It is the moment when destruction approaches but cannot enter. It is when judgment moves through a region but skips a marked dwelling. It is when danger scans for access and finds none. That pattern has appeared before in sacred history. There were households once marked, not because they were perfect, but because they were covered. When destruction moved, it recognized the covering and moved on. Your house was marked. You may not have seen the mark with your physical eyes. There may not have been visible signs on your doorposts. But in the unseen realm, there was identification. There was covenant. There was ownership declared over your life. And when the angel of death approached on March 4th, it recognized that mark. Protection is not random favoritism. It is covenant alignment. You were not spared because you are flawless. You were spared because you belong. There is a difference. Belonging activates covering. Alignment activates authority. When your life is positioned under divine ownership, destruction must respect the boundary. It does not argue. It does not negotiate. It passes over. And here is the deeper truth. Passing over is not passive. It is intentional restraint. It is heaven saying, not this one, not this house, not this timeline. On March 4th, your timeline was protected. You must begin to see your life through covenant lenses, not coincidence. Too many people reduce survival to luck. They say I was fortunate. They say it just wasn't my time. But covenant language sounds different. Covenant says I am covered. Covenant says I am marked. Covenant says there is a promise attached to my existence. And destruction moves indiscriminately. Covenant creates distinction. And distinction can feel isolating at times. Have you ever wondered why you experience intense battles others seem unaware of? Have you questioned why your life carries unusual spiritual pressure? It may be because your house is marked. Marked houses draw attention, but they also carry defense. The pattern of passing over reveals something profound. Before destruction moves, heaven evaluates alignment. Before judgment advances, covenant speaks. That means on March 4th, there was evaluation. There was review. And the verdict was clear. You are still under promise. This is why the angel of death did not have clearance. Clearance is everything in the unseen realm. Without it, assignments stall. Without it, strategies collapse. Without it, timelines freeze. And your life, on that night, was not authorized for interruption. But do not misunderstand this protection. Passing over is mercy, not immunity from responsibility. In sacred history, those who were spared were also instructed. They were told to prepare. They were told to remain ready. They were told to remember what had been done for them. Protection carried is the day, and the same is true for you. If your house was passed over, then your house must remain aligned. Doors that were once open to compromise must close. Patterns that invited vulnerability must shift. Covenant covering is powerful, but it thrives in obedience. Protection flows most freely where alignment is maintained. There is also this truth: passing over signals transition. In history, it marked the beginning of movement into a new season. It was not just about surviving a night. It was about entering a different chapter. And perhaps March 4th marked a transition for you. You may sense that something has shifted since then. A subtle seriousness, a heightened awareness, a sense that time matters more now. That is not imagination. That is transition energy. When destruction passes over, destiny accelerates. Because once the threat is denied, purpose advances. Your house was marked for advancement, not stagnation. And consider this carefully. But if the reason destruction approached was because transition was near, what if the opposition sensed that you were about to step into greater influence? Often, the most intense confrontations occur at the edge of breakthrough. Darkness attempts one final push before the door opens. But the door did not close on March 4th. It remained shut to destruction and open to destiny. The pattern of passing over also carries gratitude. Those who were spared were instructed to remember the night of deliverance. Not to live in fear of what almost happened, but to honor the protection that intervened. Remembrance strengthens faith. It builds confidence in future battles. If heaven has done it before, heaven can do it again. Let March 4th become a marker in your memory, not as a night of terror, but as a night of distinction. The night your house was identified as covered. The night destruction had to adjust its path because of Covenant. The night your unfinished purpose outweighed a premature ending. You are living proof of passing over protection. And if Covenant has marked you once, it has not expired. Covering is not seasonal. It is sustained. The same authority that drew a boundary on March 4th remains active. The same guard that stood watch remains alert. The same promise that shielded your breath remains intact. The Covenant always calls for response. Will you honor the protection by aligning fully? Will you treat your days as sacred extensions of mercy? Will you recognize that being marked is both privilege and responsibility? The pattern is clear. Destruction approaches. Covenant identifies. Authority intervenes. Purpose continues. And your purpose is still continuing. There are battles that shake walls, and then there are battles that never touch the physical realm but determine everything within it. March 4th was the second kind. Nothing may have fallen in your house. No visible alarm may have sounded. No headline announced conflict. Yet in the unseen realm, there was movement intense enough to alter outcomes. You did not see it, but it was real. There is a dimension where accusations are raised before actions unfold. A courtroom of sorts in the spiritual realm where intentions are examined, permissions are debated, and destinies are contested. Before destruction attempts entry, there is often a request. Before interference manifests, there is often argument. And on March 4th, your name was not just targeted, it was discussed. Accusations may have sounded convincing. Whispers about your past. Reminders of your mistakes. References to your weaknesses. The unseen accuser does not invent lies as often as it weaponizes history. It points to failures. It hides inconsistencies. It questions worthiness. And it argues for access. But here is what shifts everything. Your destiny is not decided by accusation. It is secured by assignment. In that unseen courtroom, your unfinished purpose outweighed every argument against you. The calling attached to your life carried more weight than your imperfections. The future written about you silenced the case built against you. And when the verdict was issued, it did not grant access to destruction. It commissioned defense. This is where Michael's authority becomes crucial. Michael does not stand randomly. He stands where verdict has already been determined in favor of continuation. His presence on March 4th signified that the case was closed before the attack could proceed. Authority outranked accusation. Assignment outranked argument. Purpose outranked permission. The battle you did not see was not chaotic shouting. It was structured confrontation. It was hierarchy meeting hierarchy. It was rank confronting rank. And when rank higher than destruction took its place over your house, the outcome was settled. The angel of death passed over because clearance was denied. Imagine how many times in your life outcomes shifted without explanation. Plans that almost collapsed but didn't. Situations that nearly escalated but somehow stabilized. Decisions that could have led to harm but were redirected at the last moment. You may have credited instinct. You may have called it timing. But perhaps those moments were also evidence of unseen battles fought on your behalf. Protection often looks like coincidence to the unaware. But now you are aware. March 4th was not just about one night. It was about revealing that your life operates within a larger spiritual governance. There is oversight. There is monitoring. There is involvement beyond what your eyes can measure. And if a battle was fought without your participation, imagine what victories are possible when you become aligned intentionally. The unseen courtroom also reveals something humbling. You are not self-sustained. You are supported. You are advocated for. Even when you are unaware, there is representation working in your favor. That should not produce pride, it should produce gratitude. Because if the outcome depended solely on your perfection, none of us would stand. The authority that defended you did so because of promise, not performance. That is critical to understand. You were not spared because you earned immunity. You were spared because your life is tied to divine intention. Your breath is connected to purpose. Your timeline is attached to impact. And until that impact is completed, destruction cannot finalize its case. But here is where the message sharpens. Just because the verdict favored you on March 4th does not mean complacency is wise. The unseen realm responds to alignment. When you walk in obedience, authority strengthens around you. When you drift into compromise, vulnerability increases. The battle you did not see should awaken responsibility in the days you do see. You cannot control every unseen argument, but you can control your visible obedience. Think of it this way. If a defense team fought intensely to preserve your future, would you treat that future casually? If rank confronted rank on your behalf, would you return to patterns that weaken your positioning? Protection invites partnership. And there is another layer to this battle. When destruction was denied access to you, it did not celebrate. It retreated. That means strategy may shift. Angles may change. Pressure may attempt to reappear in different forms: discouragement, distraction, delay. But now you know something you did not fully grasp before. You are not unguarded. The same authority that denied access once remains active. The unseen courtroom did not dissolve after March 4th. Governance continues. Oversight continues. Assignment continues. And your life remains under watch, not surveillance of suspicion, but supervision of purpose. The battle you didn't see was proof that your existence matters in ways you cannot measure. Ordinary lives do not generate that level of confrontation. Casual destinies do not require that level of defense. There was intensity because there is significance. And this is what must anchor you moving forward. Fear has no authority over a defended life. Awareness, yes. Responsibility, yes. But fear, no. You do not need to look over your shoulder in panic. You need to look forward in purpose. The confrontation has already revealed something crucial. Your timeline is still open. The verdict stands. The assignment remains. And the battle you didn't see was not to scare you. It was to secure you. Protection is powerful. It is comforting. It is reassuring to know that on March 4th, when the angel of death passed over your house, because Michael stood guard, you were covered. But hidden inside protection is a warning. And if you miss the warning, you risk misunderstanding the protection. Being spared is not the same as being excused from growth. There is a tendency in human nature to relax after crisis passes. When danger retreats, we breathe easier. We return to routine. We assume the moment is over. But spiritually, moments like March 4th are not conclusions. They are awakenings. They are divine interruptions meant to realign you before your next season begins. Protection does not remove responsibility. It increases it. If heaven intervenes so decisively over your life, it is because something about your path requires precision. You cannot drift carelessly into the days ahead. You cannot reopen doors that were quietly closed for your safety. You cannot entertain patterns that weaken your spiritual positioning. The warning within the protection is simple but urgent. Stay aligned. There were things in your life before March 4th that may have created vulnerability. Conversations that drained your discernment. Environments that dulled your sensitivity. Habits that seemed small but slowly eroded clarity. When destruction attempted access, those vulnerabilities could have been entry points. But mercy stepped in. Mercy is not permission to continue in misalignment. It is an opportunity to correct course. Think carefully about the days leading up to that night. Were there nudges you ignored? Convictions you postponed? Instructions you delayed? Sometimes heaven whispers long before it intervenes. And if whispers are ignored, intervention becomes louder. March 4th was loud in the spirit. The warning inside it is not about fear, it is about awareness. Protection should make you sharper, not softer. It should make you more disciplined, not more distracted. When you realize your life was contested and defended, you begin to value it differently. You begin to treat your time differently. You begin to guard your atmosphere intentionally. There is also this truth. Protection does not mean every future battle will be intercepted without your participation. Some battles require your obedience as part of the defense. Prayer becomes more intentional. Discernment becomes more active. Choices become more strategic. The days ahead matter. You may notice subtle tests arising. Invitations to return to old mindsets. Opportunities to compromise small standards. Moments where it would be easier to blend in rather than stand firm. These are not random temptations. They are checkpoints. They reveal whether you understood the warning inside the protection. Alignment is not a one-time decision. It is daily positioning. Michael stood guard over your house, but you must stand guard over your heart. You must guard what enters your thoughts. You must guard what influences your spirit. You must guard the words you agree with. Because agreements shape access, and access determines vulnerability. There are doors in the spiritual realm that open through repeated agreement with negativity, fear, bitterness, or complacency. Those doors do not swing wide overnight. They inch open gradually. And often, we do not notice until pressure increases. The protection of March 4th was a boundary drawn externally. Now you must draw boundaries internally. This is where maturity begins. You cannot assume that because destruction passed over once, you can ignore discipline moving forward. Covenant covering thrives in obedience. When you align your actions with your calling, authority strengthens around you. When you resist conviction, protection becomes strained, not because heaven withdraws, but because you create gaps. The warning within the protection is also about timing. You are entering a season where decisions will carry weight. Conversations will shape direction. Relationships will influence momentum. If you move casually, you risk delaying what was preserved. Ask yourself honestly, what needs to change now? Perhaps it is your prayer life, becoming consistent rather than occasional. Perhaps it is distancing from voices that sow doubt. Perhaps it is committing fully to the purpose you have been postponing. Perhaps it is forgiving what you have been holding on to. Whatever it is, clarity will follow obedience. Protection gave you time. Time is sacred. March 4th was a reminder that your timeline is not guaranteed by routine. It is sustained by purpose. And when purpose is active, time must be used intentionally. You were spared for impact, not inertia. There is also gratitude embedded in this warning. Gratitude keeps you humble. It prevents entitlement from forming. It reminds you that you are alive because of mercy, not because of invincibility. Gratitude fuels obedience. It strengthens alignment. It softens your heart toward instruction. Do not let the memory of protection fade into ordinary thinking. Let it anchor you. The warning within the protection is not heavy. It is loving. It says, you matter too much to drift. It says, your future is too significant to waste. It says, your survival was intentional. March 4th closed one possible outcome. Now your obedience will shape the next one. You were guarded externally. Now guard yourself internally. Because the same heaven that intervened once is watching how you respond next. March 4th was not an isolated night. It was a marker. And whenever heaven marks a night, it often signals the beginning of a countdown. The next 7 days after divine intervention are not ordinary. They carry sensitivity. They carry instruction. They carry opportunity. The next 7 days matter. When protection activates at the level it did over your house, when the angel of death passes over because Michael stood guard, it is usually because transition is unfolding. And transitions require attention. They require listening. They require intentional movement. You may notice heightened awareness during these days. Dreams may feel clear. Thoughts may feel sharper. Convictions may feel stronger. This is not coincidence. It is spiritual sensitivity increasing. After confrontation in the unseen realm, clarity often follows in the visible realm. Do not ignore it. The next 7 days are a window. Windows do not stay open forever. They invite response. They invite preparation. They invite alignment. There may be specific instructions impressed upon your spirit, subtle but firm. Reach out to that person. End that pattern. Begin that discipline. Start that project. Return to that promise. These impressions are not random ideas. They are guided nudges. And when heaven intervenes as it did on March 4th, it expects cooperation. Something is shifting in your timeline. The enemy attempted interruption before you could step fully into what is ahead. Now that interruption has failed, acceleration becomes possible. But acceleration without preparation can create instability. That is why these next 7 days are critical. They are stabilizing days, aligning days, clarifying days. Be careful what you agree with during this period. Words matter more than you realize. If fear whispers, do not echo it. If doubt suggests retreat, do not entertain it. Guard your agreement, because what you agree with gains influence. At the same time, watch for opportunity disguised as inconvenience. Sometimes the very door that feels disruptive is the one leading into destiny. When protection has occurred, new pathways often open quickly. You must remain alert enough to recognize them. This is not a week for distraction. Reduce noise where possible. Create moments of stillness. Pay attention to patterns. There may be confirmations repeating themselves through conversations, through scripture, through unexpected encounters. Heaven often speaks in repetition when urgency is present, and there is urgency. The next 7 days are not about fear of what could happen. They are about readiness for what will happen. You are preserved for movement, preserved for purpose, preserved for impact. And impact requires awareness. You may also sense resistance attempting to return in subtle forms. Not dramatic confrontation like March 4th, but quieter discouragement, sudden fatigue, irritation without clear cause. These are attempts to dull your sensitivity. Recognize them without panic. You are not unguarded, but you must remain intentional. Clarity is your advantage right now. If there had been something you have delayed, an apology, a decision, a commitment, this is the week to address it. Delay creates vulnerability. Obedience creates momentum. The 7 days following intervention are often designed to seal what was defended. Seal it with alignment. And understand this: the protection you experienced was not just defensive, it was preparatory. Heaven did not only block destruction, it preserved you for manifestation. Something is closer than you think. A breakthrough, a shift, a confirmation. But it requires that you step forward deliberately. Do not underestimate small acts of obedience in these days. Small steps create large stability. A consistent prayer time, a firm boundary, a courageous conversation. These are not minor decisions. They are structural reinforcements for your destiny. If this resonates deeply, if you sense that these next 7 days are truly pivotal, then declare it. Type "I will align" in the comments as an act of agreement. Blessing code 842 is now activated over your next 7 days. Let that number represent clarity, stability, and divine momentum. But remain attentive, because what unfolds after these 7 days will confirm why March 4th could not be your ending. There is something forming beneath the surface, and you will be grateful you stayed aware long enough to see it manifest. Before we move forward, I must speak to those who feel the urgency of this window. This message is not reaching you by accident, and there are others standing at the edge of their own 7-day turning point who have not yet heard it. When you give through Super Thanks, become a member, or so through the PayPal link in the description or the PayPal QR code on your screen, you are not supporting a channel. You are extending a lifeline. Scripture declares that when you sow, you will reap in due season. That is God speaking directly into your obedience right now. I sense the first-person response rising in you. I want to be part of what God is doing here. That desire is holy. It is alignment in action. When you release your seed into this mission, you are watering fields you may never see but heaven fully records. You are fueling light in dark places. You are helping protection reach houses that do not yet realize they were spared. Do not delay your obedience in this moment. Act now. And as you give, I declare that your next 7 days will be marked by favor, clarity, and multiplied grace. The window is open. The next 7 days matter. You were not spared so you could remain the same. On March 4th, when the angel of death passed over your house because Michael stood guard, heaven was not just preventing an ending, it was announcing a calling. Protection is not the final message. Activation is. And now the call to rise is echoing louder than ever. There is a difference between surviving and stepping forward. Survival keeps you breathing. Rising makes you effective. And if your life required that level of defense, then your life requires that level of response. You were spared for impact. Somewhere in your spirit, you already know this. There has been a stirring that refuses to quiet down. A sense that you cannot continue living casually. A feeling that something is demanding more of you. Not more stress, not more pressure, but more intention. The call to rise is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming fully who you were designed to be. You cannot ignore what March 4th revealed. Your existence carries weight. Your presence influences atmospheres. Your obedience shifts outcomes. And whether you feel qualified or not, the fact remains heaven defended you because heaven intends to use you. Rise in your thinking. Stop speaking about yourself as if you are fragile and forgotten. Stop rehearsing narratives of limitation. If destruction had authority over you, it would have succeeded. But it did not. That means your life operates under higher governance. Think like someone who is covered. Think like someone who is commissioned. Rise in your discipline. The days ahead require structure. Prayer cannot remain occasional. Focus cannot remain scattered. Distractions cannot dominate your schedule. If your purpose is still breathing inside you, it needs room to grow. Discipline is not restriction. It is alignment. Rise in your courage. There are conversations you have avoided because they felt uncomfortable. There are steps you delayed because they felt uncertain. But uncertainty did not stop heaven from defending you. Why should it stop you from moving? Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action despite it. And let me say this clearly, silence now would be a mistake. If this message has confirmed what you sense but could not articulate, then do not keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to understand why they are still here. Like it as a sign that you are not ashamed of divine protection. Comment and declare that you are rising into your unfinished purpose. Subscribe to this channel if you are committed to remaining spiritually alert in this season. When you engage, you are not boosting numbers. You are extending clarity to someone who may still be confused about the battle they survived. Because there are others who woke up on March 5th unaware that their house had been guarded. The call to rise is also communal. You are not the only one marked. You are not the only one defended. There is a remnant awakening, people who recognize that survival was not random. And when guarded ones rise together, impact multiplies. But rising requires shedding. There may be relationships that cannot follow you into your next level. There may be mindsets that must be abandoned. There may be comforts that must be released. Elevation demands lightness. You cannot ascend while clinging to what was meant for a previous season. The March 4th closed one possible future. Now you must step intentionally into the one that remains. And here is the urgency. Purpose delayed becomes purpose diminished. Not because heaven withdraws it, but because hesitation erodes momentum. You were given time. Do not waste it waiting for perfect conditions. Conditions rarely become perfect. Obedience creates its own clarity. Rise even if you feel unready. Rise even if you feel overlooked. Rise even if you feel uncertain. The very fact that opposition attempted interruption proves that your next chapter carries threat to darkness. That means your next chapter carries power. And power unused is potential wasted. You are not called to spectate your destiny. You are called to participate in it. Let this be the moment you decide that being spared will not end as a story of relief, but begin as a story of impact. Let this be the moment you shift from gratitude alone to action fueled by gratitude. You survived March 4th for a reason. Now rise for that reason. And as you step forward, understand this. The guard that stood over your house is not intimidated by what lies ahead. The authority that denied access once remains active. You are not rising alone. You are rising supported. But the choice to stand up belongs to you. Heaven intervened. Now you respond. There is a mark that cannot be seen with natural eyes, yet it is unmistakable in the spirit. It is not ink on skin. It is not a symbol worn outwardly. It is a spiritual distinction carried by those who have been defended, preserved, and set apart for unfinished purpose. On March 4th, when the angel of death passed over your house because Michael stood guard, that mark became evident over your life. The guarded ones carry a different atmosphere. You may have sensed this difference before you had language for it. Situations intensify around you without clear explanation. Rooms shift when you enter. Opposition arises when you make simple decisions of obedience. It can feel unfair at times. It can feel exhausting. But it is also revealing. Resistance often identifies value. The mark of the guarded ones is not comfort. It is calling. Those who are marked often experience increased spiritual resistance before breakthrough. Pressure seems to build just before expansion. Misunderstanding appears right before clarity. Fatigue attempts to settle in right before acceleration. If you look closely at your life, you may see this pattern repeating. Every time you approach a new level, something tries to pull you back. That is not coincidence. When March 4th unfolded the way it did, it confirmed that your life is not operating unnoticed. You are observed in the spirit realm, not with suspicion, but with significance. The guarded ones are monitored because they carry impact. Your obedience shifts more than their own circumstances. There is also another sign of the marked, a persistent awareness that you are not alone, even in solitude. It may feel at times like you are being watched, not in fear but in covering. A sense that something larger than you is attentive to your steps. That awareness is not paranoia. It is spiritual perception. When authority stands guard over your life, you begin to sense that oversight. And yet, being marked does not mean being exempt from struggle. In fact, it often means the opposite. Guarded ones walk through fire without being consumed. They face storms without sinking. They encounter accusation without collapse. The mark does not remove challenge. It ensures survival through it. Think about the battles you have already endured. Moments that should have broken you but did not. Situations that could have defined you negatively but somehow turned for your growth. That is the evidence of the mark. You are not untouched by hardship. You are carried through it. The guarded ones also feel a holy dissatisfaction with mediocrity. There is a constant sense that more is required. Not more achievement for pride, but more obedience for purpose. Settling feels uncomfortable. Stagnation feels heavy. There is an inner push toward growth that refuses to quiet down. That push is part of the mark. On March 4th, the confrontation in the unseen realm intensified at marking. When Michael stood guard, it reinforced your distinction. Darkness now knows what heaven already declared. You are not available for premature ending. But here is the deeper layer. Being marked means being accountable. Guarded ones cannot live carelessly. Their decisions echo further. Their influence stretches wider. When they compromise, consequences ripple. When they obey, impact multiplies. The mark magnifies both responsibility and reward. You may also notice increased discernment in this season. Sensitivity to atmospheres. Awareness of hidden motives. The big recognition of what aligns and what does not. This is not imagination. It is refinement. Guarded ones are trained through experience to recognize spiritual shifts quickly. At times, this heightened awareness can feel isolating. You may struggle to explain to others why you sense what you sense. You may appear overly cautious or deeply reflective. But understand this: clarity is protection. Discernment is defense. The mark sharpens your perception so that access points remain guarded. Another sign of the marked is resilience. Not denial of pain, but refusal to remain defeated. You recover. You rise again. You adapt. You learn. There is something within you that refuses to surrender to despair. That resilience is not self-generated strength. It is sustained by covering. March 4th was a visible reminder of an invisible identity. You are among the guarded ones. This does not make you superior. It makes you responsible. It calls you higher. It invites you to steward your life with intentionality. It asks you to treat your time as sacred and your obedience as essential. And here is what must anchor you. The mark is not fragile. It is reinforced by covenant. The same authority that drew a boundary over your house continues to recognize your assignment. You are not marked for destruction. You are marked for completion. There will be days when pressure resurfaces, days when opposition attempts intimidation. But remember the evidence. Remember March 4th. Remember that when destruction approached, it was denied access. That denial was not temporary luck. It was confirmation of identity. The mark of the guarded ones means you are preserved for purpose. Walk like it. Think like it. Live like it. Because the story that almost ended is still unfolding, and the mark upon you ensures it will reach its intended conclusion. Yours a reality that almost unfolded. A version of March 4th that never reached manifestation. A timeline that was considered but never completed. A chain of events that moved toward your house but was stopped before it could write its conclusion. What would have happened, but didn't, is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to awaken gratitude and deepen your understanding of how close intervention truly was. If the angel of death had not passed over your house, if Michael had not stood guard, there would have been a shift in your story that could not be reversed. Conversations left unfinished. Words never spoken. Assignments abandoned mid-process. The ripple effects would have extended further than you realize. Because your life is not isolated. There are people attached to your obedience who may not even know your name yet. There are moments in the future that require your presence to unfold correctly. There are breakthroughs scheduled on timelines that intersect with yours. If your breath had been removed prematurely, those intersections would have dissolved. But they didn't. That is the power of interruption. You see, what almost happened carries weight precisely because it did not happen. The enemy does not waste effort on meaningless targets. If there was a serious attempt, it reveals serious significance. The intensity of what approached your house on March 4th was proportional to the importance of what lies ahead of you. And here's something sobering. Some battles are final if they succeed. There are moments in spiritual warfare that do not allow for second chances. But this was not your final moment. Heaven decided that your assignment was not complete. The gavel fell in your favor. The timeline remained open. What would have happened, but didn't, also reveals mercy beyond comprehension. There are people who do not receive that same intervention. Not because they are less loved, but because their assignments may have reached completion. Your continued presence means your chapter is still being written. That alone should shift how you view each morning. You are living inside extended purpose. Imagine the silence that could have filled your house. The shock of viewing. The unfinished plans left behind. That version of reality was close enough to require confrontation. And yet it was held back by authority stronger than intention. You were not just lucky. You were defended. And the defense was decisive. When destruction passes over, it does not retreat casually. It recognizes hierarchy. It adjusts course. It seeks another direction. But it cannot override a sealed boundary. That means what almost happened encountered a force it could not challenge successfully. The fact that you are hearing this message proves the alternate outcome was denied. But do not let gratitude fade into comfort. What would have happened, but didn't, should sharpen your sense of urgency. It should cause you to ask different questions. Not why was I spared, but what must I do with the time I've been given? Not how close was I to loss, but how intentional must I now become? The preservation of your life carries responsibility. There are habits that might have continued unchanged if March 4th had felt ordinary. There are priorities that might have remained misaligned. There are delays that might have stretched further. But intervention disrupts routine. It forces reevaluation. It demands clarity. You cannot pretend nothing significant occurred. Something tried to close your book early, and something stronger refused. The alternate timeline would have silenced your voice. It would have interrupted your influence. It would have ended possibilities you cannot fully measure. But heaven looked at your unfinished purpose and said, "Not yet. Not yet for your impact. Not yet for your obedience. Not yet for the lives you are meant to touch." That phrase, "not yet," should echo in your spirit. It is both mercy and mandate. Mercy because you were spared. Mandate because you are expected to move. What would have happened, but didn't, also reveals the seriousness of spiritual reality. The unseen realm is not symbolic imagination. It is active. It is structured. It is responsive. Decisions are weighed. Access is debated. Outcomes are influenced. March 4th was a turning point you may never fully comprehend. But you can honor it. Honor it by living deliberately. Honor it by refusing to minimize your calling. Honor it by stepping into alignment instead of drifting into distraction. Honor it by remembering that there was a version of this story where you were not here to hear these words. But that is not the version that unfolded. The version that unfolded is this: the angel of death passed over your house because Michael stood guard. The confrontation ended in your favor. The timeline remained intact. The assignment continues. And the what if has been replaced by what now. You are still here. The story continues. And what almost happened will forever remind you that what must happen is still ahead. March 4th will always remain a quiet milestone in your life. The world did not pause. The headlines did not announce it. The sky did not split open for public display. Yet in the unseen realm, a decision was enforced that kept your story alive. The angel of death passed over your house because Michael stood guard. And now you stand here, breathing, thinking, listening, because your purpose has not been finished. Let that truth settle deeply. You are still here for a reason. Not by accident. Not by luck. Not by routine survival. You are here because heaven weighed your assignment and declared it incomplete. You are here because what you carry has not yet been released fully into the earth. You are here because someone's breakthrough is still connected to your obedience. You are here because chapters remain unwritten. March 4th was not just protection, it was confirmation. Confirmation that your life is supervised by divine authority. Confirmation that your timeline is guarded until fulfillment. Confirmation that what almost ended could not end you. The guard stood. The boundary held. The verdict favored continuation. And now comes the assurance. The same authority that defended you then remains active now. Protection was not a one-night event. It was a revelation of ongoing oversight. The presence that stood watch did not resign at sunrise. The covering that marked your house did not expire at dawn. You are not walking forward alone. But assurance does not mean passivity. You have been reminded that your days matter, that your decisions echo, that your obedience accelerates destiny. There is a holy responsibility attached to continued breath. And yet there is also peace, because the one who preserved you is faithful to complete what he has begun. You may still face resistance. You may still encounter pressure. But now you know something you did not fully grasp before. Opposition does not mean abandonment. Conflict does not mean defeat. If anything, it confirms significance. You have already seen what happens when destruction approaches without permission. There it feeds. Fear has lost its authority over you. Gratitude must take its place. Let gratitude anchor your mornings. Let purpose guide your afternoons. Let obedience shape your nights. When doubt whispers, remember March 4th. When discouragement attempts to cloud your clarity, remember that your house was guarded. When insecurity questions your worth, remember that heaven intervened to keep you alive. You are not fragile in the way you once thought. You are fortified. And as we close this message, I want you to declare something with boldness. Type "My purpose will be completed" in the comments as a sign of agreement with heaven's decision over your life. Blessing code 529 is now activated over your future. Let that number symbolize completion, fulfillment, and divine alignment. Do not treat this as symbolic ritual alone. Treat it as agreement. Agreement that you will not waste preserved time. Agreement that you will rise into unfinished assignment. Agreement that you will honor protection with obedience. And before we part, I must speak one final word to those who feel the weight of this entire journey, from the confrontation of March 4th to this moment of clarity. This message is not entertainment. It is awakening. It is warning wrapped in mercy. It is confirmation wrapped in urgency. When you sow through Super Thanks, when you become a member, when you give through the PayPal link in the description or the PayPal QR code on your screen, you are not supporting a voice. You are advancing a mission. You are helping this revelation reach another house that was guarded but does not yet understand why. Scripture declares that those who water others will themselves be watered. Hear that as God speaking directly to you now. I sense the first-person response forming in your spirit. I will help this message travel further. That is obedience in motion. When you release your seed into this ground, you are partnering with heaven's timing. You are lighting lamps in places where confusion still lingers. Do not delay. Act decisively. And as you give, I declare multiplied grace over your household, open doors over your future, and continued protection over your assignment. You are still here for a reason. The angel of death passed over. Michael stood guard. Your breath remains. Your purpose lives. And the story that heaven refused to end is now moving toward completion. Walk forward with assurance. Walk forward with clarity. Walk forward knowing that what tried to stop you only confirmed how necessary you are. This is not the end. It is the continuation of a guarded destiny.